Okay, Michelle, are you ready to go? Cool. So if you share your screen with your presentation, we'll kick off.
There's an echo. Is that on my end?
It might be, but it's okay. Don't worry about that because I'll mute myself anyway.
Can you still hear me?
Yep.
Okay. I can't hear anything now, unfortunately.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, that's good. So just if you share your screen and pull up your presentation, and then we'll kick off.
There's some feedback, unfortunately. I think it must be my speakers.
That's okay, because it'll just be for now, and then as soon as you start presenting, I'll mute myself. It's only because I'm speaking, so you won't actually hear it when you're actually presenting.
Okay, and you want me to share my presentation? I'm sorry. So you want me to? What would you like me to do?
So share screen in the control panel. Share screen and pull up your presentation.
And then pull up my presentation.
Yeah.
I can't see it. I'm sorry, and the buzzing is really so. Sorry about that. Do I go share my entire screen then? Is it doing something?
Pull up your presentation now, and then I'll push you live. Perfect. Are you in presenter mode? Great, that's perfect. Okay, we're good to go. Hi everybody, and sorry about the slight tech issues this morning, but we're ready to go now. Welcome to the 17th annual OPEX Live 2021 virtual event. We're very excited to have you all here with us today on this rainy day in Sydney anyway. And for those of you in New South Wales, I hope you're all keeping dry. I'd like to kick off the morning by welcoming you all to the virtual event, and thank you all for joining us. And thank you to our event sponsors, Nintex, for sponsoring the event, because without whom we wouldn't be able to put on such things like this. And without further ado, I wanted to start with our first speaker of the day, Michelle Lue-Reid, who's the Head of Portfolio Governance at AGL. And she'll be talking all things about bridging the strategy and execution gap. So Michelle, I will hand it over to you, and you can start presenting and sharing your insights with everyone. So everyone, please welcome Michelle.
Hi, good morning, everyone, and I appreciate the introduction. Welcome to Australia OPEX Live. I'm pleased to do the keynote presentation. I hope I'm coming through okay. We had some technical difficulties earlier. I currently work with AGL Energy, but I've worked in other organizations such as Coles Group, the Commonwealth Bank, the Royal Bank of Canada, Air Canada, and a consulting firm, Arthur D. Little. And in today's presentation, in about 30 minutes, what I want to be able to do is talk about some of the best practices that I've seen in terms of taking fantastic ideas and turning them into realizable action. That, to me, has been one of the biggest challenges. It's not just defining the strategy, but moving from thinking a great idea to executing on that great idea. So I hope you at the end, have some questions for me. So get your thinking caps on. So this just briefly about AGL Energy. This is not a sales pitch. We're a proudly Australian company with over 180 years of experience, over 4 million customers that we sell electricity, gas, and telecommunications services to. We're also very proud of our mixed portfolio of generation assets, which include green technologies. We're Australia's largest private investor in renewable energy, and we're also very proud of our social license agenda and supporting communities where we invest. If you have a chance, I'm curious if you like to use things like menti.com. When you think about strategy and strategy execution as a percent, how many enterprises do you think fail at the execution of their strategic ideas? So if you could go to menti.com and use the code 12080427, you should be able to pick an answer. Is it 70% that fail, 80% that fail, or 90% that fail? I will just go to my menti.com. It's not open. Are folks having sorry about that. Let me just switch over to are you able to see? Hopefully we've got about 7 responses. So 80% is the answer that most of you have picked in terms of how many enterprises fail at strategy execution. Let's see what the right answer is. And in fact, you're correct. According to the Harvard Business School, companies really struggle. 80% of them fail at strategy execution. And if we look at sources like Fortune, Harvard Business Review, the Strategy Execution book, and Profit from the Curve book, you'll see that 10% of strategies that are effectively formulated are the ones that are actually successfully executed. Only 1/10. Even though the prize is huge, increasing performance by at least 50% for most organizations is still out of the reach of most successful organizations. In fact, the majority of cases, the problem isn't about strategy. Most of us have very well formulated strategies. We put a lot of effort into those. It's bad execution. And in fact, if you look at most strategies, companies like ours, companies like yours, have targets that look for real growth in and around 9 to 10%, but less than 1 in 10 companies, also 10%, achieve that level of profitable growth. So what's interesting is you go to these schools like a Harvard Business School and spend a lot of time, these consultancies spend a lot of time crafting the narrative, crafting the strategic message, but there are very, very few courses on strategic execution. And now that science is emerging, now schools are starting to offer real support and expertise in this space. But I want to be able to share with you some things I've seen, and I welcome your insights as well. So companies are struggling. If you're struggling, you're 1 in 10. You're 9 in 10. If you're not struggling, you're 1 in 10. And what are some of the other barriers to executing on strategy? Before we move into the solution, here are some of the problem statements that we see. 4 main ones, again, according to the Harvard Business School. The first, and maybe you recognize some of these, is the vision barrier. Interesting is this idea of cascading the strategy from executive all the way down to the front line. If you were to check the front line, the studies show only 5% of our workforce truly understand the strategy. huge opportunity gap. Also, there's a management barrier. Why is it that information hasn't been cascaded? Well, our senior leaders spend maximum 1 hour per month discussing strategy. And those who spend more than an hour of strategy per month, it's only 15% of our leaders who do that. Resources, so great idea, great plan. Now you need to link the budget to your strategy. And surprisingly, only 40% of organizations do that. And finally, the people barrier. Maybe this is one that's near and dear to your heart. It is to mine. Percent of managers that have linked KPIs, outcomes to strategy, again, surprisingly low. Only 25% of managers link incentives to strategy. If you're in an organization like ours, we're very motivated by our KPIs. So that to me seems like a real opportunity. So these are some barriers that we can address with some of the best practices that have emerged over the last few decades. You can see I'm a fan of Harvard Business School, but this just happens to be an example of the emerging science. They actually call this book of theirs is called The Execution Premium. Kaplan and Norton have, in fact, 6 steps, that's in the center, describing a management system to execute on strategy. Again, a very new and emerging science. I won't have time to cover all 7. Well, what I'd like to be able to do, though, is touch on the key 4, the 4 that I think are the most critical. So today's 30 minutes will not touch on crafting the strategy. What we'll talk about is translating the strategy, aligning the organization, executing and supporting through the strategy, and how do you monitor and learn to get better over time. Okay, so translating the strategy, the first of 4 sections. Again, we're not here to dissect your strategy, assuming that there's been some good work there. But I want to be able to say a characteristic of a well-crafted strategy for execution provides a framework to guide critical choices to help that organization achieve a desired future state. So what do I mean by that? A well-crafted strategy should help guide leaders. On the one hand, the guiding you need and concreteness you need in the strategy helps you understand what are priorities and what are not. Where should you be setting your goals? Where should you be allocating resources and not? It should be about choices, and the strategy should make that clear what those choices should be, what should be priority. The second section of a well-crafted strategy is one that's sufficiently flexible, because what I've seen companies get in danger of is being so diligently following your strategy, they actually miss the mark because there are unexpected changes in the market, unexpected demands from customers, local conditions change, your own organization changes. And so your strategy has to have enough flexibility to be both concrete and adaptive. And a strategy like that helps guide and frame the execution which is to come. So here's an example, due to some time that we've lost for the technical difficulties, I'll be brief. But here's an example of 2 different airlines. I used to work at an airline, and how they frame their strategic priorities. Now, this would have been in about 2010, about 10 years ago. So the one on the left versus the one on the right, which one appears to be more effective in guiding strategic choices? So the American Airlines one, if you look at that, that could be any company, that could be any industry. Be a leader, engage our team, provide a return. The Southwest priorities are much more concrete and guide the organization. We're going to modernize the fleet. We're going to bring on a new reservation system. We're going to bring on a rapid rewards frequent flyer program. At the time, Southwest did not have a frequent flyer program, as an example. So those you can tell the difference in terms of guiding and aligning the organization, which is the next tranche in our 4-phase plan to execute well. So aligning the strategy. If you're like me, you like to know, how do you align the strategy and the organization? What tools can we use? And can you show me a tangible example? So this is what I've tried to do here. In aligning the organization, what we mean is from your chief executive to your executive team all the way down to the front line, not 5%. How do we get everyone understanding what the organization is trying to achieve? Number one. Number two, how do we make sure people feel accountable to deliver those outcomes? So knowledge and accountability. So this section, very critical. First is the knowledge piece. So you might be familiar with a strategy map. With a strategy map, or Hoshin Cannery, if you're used to these terms, where you drill down from the most important goals of the organization into more and more specific detail. So this is an example of a strategy map, and you can use it at every level of your organization to create clarity. The goal here is clarity. And then with understanding and buy-in, there's accountability. So in this example, we want to grow profits of the business. We think we can grow revenue and outperform the market by 2%. There's a customer piece here, if you can see my mouse. How do we exceed the needs of the different customer segments? There's a process and technology component here. So how do we bring in accounting software? How do we improve the data, the interfaces? How do we focus on acquisition? And then this next piece here is the people component. So this is a fully integrated strategy map, even though it's at a high level, that creates clarity around what needs to get executed. The second piece is something called catchball. For those of you who come from the Lean Six Sigma space, you'll be familiar with this term catchball. So the idea is, it might feel like a cascade, but the catchball is really a two-way conversation with the manager and the managee. Here's what I'm thinking. Here's my goal to, for example, continuously improve our operations and integrate them across the organization. What you're doing in catchball is you're seeking advice from the people you work with or work for you, so you can refine that goal. So catchball is this idea of bouncing those goals and strategy imperatives back and forth to create clarity and buy-in. And so the strategy map ideally is a two-way street, not a one-way street. And so this is how we align the organization. And as you're aligning the organization, you're checking in for ownership and accountability at all levels, which you'll formalize later. So I'm moving along to the third tranche, which is what you were all here for. You're all here for, how do we execute and support the strategy, distinct from creating the strategy now. So I have, first and foremost, and may sound really basic to you, but it's still a struggle I see in most organizations, is breaking that high-level strategy map and goals into very small goals and projects that can be delivered. The only way to move from your current state to your future state is to be able to create a roadmap and drill that down to the very specific initiatives that will deliver on that roadmap. So here's an example of a map drilled down to sub-goals. Here on the right, you might be familiar with the term work breakdown structure. So this is an example of, I have a financial goal with 3 financial objectives, and here are the initiatives that I am doing in the company. How many of these initiatives align to this goal, which aligns to this strategic imperative? So this map helps us to match the projects with the objectives, with the strategic imperative. And in this particular example, I picked it on purpose. You can see that in some cases we have to launch new initiatives or break up initiative because we have gaps or we have overlap. We do a similar exercise when breaking those very strategic things into specific actionable items with owners and resources. So another big thing that's been a challenge for us is to align the resources to deliver your strategy. So and one of those 4 barriers you heard was people. So I need to address that here in this planning and execution phase. The next important piece is this idea of working with your team and providing support they need. And I use the tool Agile Work Environment. So that means an agile culture, an agile way of working, and an agile workplace. So this could be sprints where the work is very clearly defined in 2 or 3 week increments. What's big about this is there's stand-ups every day. And there's a feedback loop to make sure that the work is being completed, the barriers are being identified and being addressed, the work is being prioritized. So it's about progress and addressing roadblocks in an agile way. That would be a daily stand-up as an example. And the last piece, what I think is really, really important, often underplayed, is this idea of a lot of our transformations and our work is energy draining. It's a huge marathon. So we need to keep levels up, the energy and the excitement up for the team. And the way to do that, one way to do that is rewards and recognition. I know it sounds obvious, but we often don't bake that in. And again, a linkage to incentive to strategy, the KPIs. So now we have aligned the organization, we've broken down the work, we've aligned the resources, we're working in an agile way with a cadence to report on progress and reward people. The last component is monitor and learn. And I put at the top, no plan survives contact with reality. No plan does. And so what I found, to hold people accountable, we need to make progress visible. What gets measured gets managed. And the strategy dashboard, I put some examples here, are critical to demonstrate where we're working well and where we need to intervene and provide more support. How do we do that is the next piece, the weekly reviews and the status reports. So we need measurements, we need a cadence, and we need accountable reporting. These are ways we keep everyone who's accountable on the hook to progress. I recommend weekly check-ins, if not daily, and I know that may sound frequent, but these check-ins can be very short. They can be 5 minutes or 15 minutes. It should be enough to know that, are there any issues? Are there any changes needed? Get the decisions, move forward. So I'm talking about a simple 1-page status report on a weekly basis, not a massive PowerPoint pack of 50 or 40 pages. I'm thinking a check-in every week with a 1-pager as an example, to keep momentum and focus on execution, because the everyday job, if people are part-timing work on the project and their BAU responsibilities, this just keeps the critical project and priorities of the strategy front and center at least once a week. So we're getting close to time. I've touched on 4 pieces that I hope you feel helps bridge. I have a great idea, to let's execute that great idea. Translate that strategy with a framework to guide choices. Align the organization, strategy themes, strategy maps, catch ball, a 2-way conversation up and down the organization. Plan that work with a work breakdown structure. Get into the details. Align your resources. Delete the silos. Work in a more agile environment together to problem solve. And reward and recognize regularly to keep up the energy. All of those pieces are core to success. And then, of course, holding people accountable, showing progress. And that could be at the team level, at the executive level, and at the board level. A regular cadence and report card on progress are the 4 things that I think will help you successfully execute in your strategy for your organization. So last little bit, if you'd like to go back to menti.com, and again, the code is 12080427. My last question for you is, now that we've touched on some things around bridging the strategy and execution gap, what is a word or short phrase that you might use and say, this was my key aha from these 30 minutes? What's my key takeaway from these 30 minutes that I will adopt this week? So go to Menti.com, use the code, tell me what you're thinking, and we'll be creating a word cloud as a way of visualizing your learnings. Okay. Oh, I should be able to.
Thanks, Michelle. That was fantastic and a really great presentation. I think while we wait for people to pop their words or short phrases as they're popping up now, I do have a question for you just quickly about your key successes over the last 12 months. And it'd be great to hear kind of what you thought, what your key success stories were, or something that's really great that's happened to you over the last 12 months.
I'll just zoom out of this. Hopefully you can see me. I'm sorry. So the question was, so could you repeat that? There's a bit of an echo.
That's okay. What were your key successes over the last 12 months, particularly with your own experience with, bridging your strategy and execution gap and your own work in this space? What have been some of your highlights over the last 12 months?
Oh, my highlights of the last 12 months. Well, I've been at AGL Energy for the past 12 months. And some of the biggest things we had to do was prioritize, because we have a very large portfolio of strategic projects. So the first thing we did, particularly with the investment committee, so this is not work that I did on my own. The investment committee meets every month, and we talk about priorities, and we are very deliberate about which projects we select that align to our growth mandate. In the last 12 months, the business cases have become stronger. The disciplines around resource planning have become stronger. I think we're better also at stopping projects that absorb resources but actually aren't going to give us the outcomes that we're looking for. So I think what we've done really well, which is part of executing, is being flexible about the plan. So we've gone harder on things like batteries and storage solutions in the past 12 months. And we've slowed down some other priority projects because they're not going to give us what we need. So my biggest success, our biggest success, is alignment at the executive level and alignment level below. We use things like the investment committee and our reporting routines so people know what's working, what's not working, and we're course correcting. So I'm very proud of our ability to prioritize and flex the strategy, still meet the overall goals, but not do so in a blinded way.
Thanks for sharing those with everyone. Did you want to quickly go over everyone's words that have popped up? I can see there's been a few that have popped up with everyone.
Yes. So what's interesting is normally for those who you guys are still entering. Thank you. This is brilliant. Hope you can read that. I realize the background might be a little confusing. So they're all the same size, these fonts. So that tells me there were probably one individual answers, because if it was 2 or 3 or 4 of you responding, say detailed guidance, that would be more dominant in the word cloud. So what I see here is you like the structure, you like the detailed guidelines. It's very pragmatic. You took away measurements to manage your own roadmap as a key takeaway. You liked clarity and the use of agile. It was focused. But it sounds like I was too high level. It's a little bit of the feedback for me. But in 30 minutes, I appreciate that might not have hit everyone's objectives for today. But thank you for the feedback. But I want you to be able, with every presentation, not just mine, but the ones after me, to think of your key takeaway and what's the actionable thing that you will do as a result of what you've heard. And if you can, take action this week. Start right away with intent to deliver on your key takeaway from today.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Michelle, for joining us and being a part of the event and presenting and sharing your insights and experiences over the last 12 months. I know it's been very rocky for everyone, but it's great to have you speaking on AGL's behalf and discussing your own key learnings and your experiences and thoughts. It's been very insightful, and as we could see by the display of words and key phrases, everyone was quite engaged with this. So really, really appreciate having you involved in the event.
Thanks, everyone.
Now, everyone, feel free to jump into the next session where we'll be discussing further with Fabio from WorkSafe Victoria. Thanks, Michelle.